Today's episode of the SOM TV podcast is brought to you by Vinexpo Americas. This April 29th through the 30th at the Miami Beach Convention Center is the premier event for North American wine professionals. For 2 days in Miami, the event brings together producers, importers, distributors, and key decision makers from North, Central, and South America and the Caribbean. For the first time in North America, the show will also be host to B Spirits and Pinot, spotlighting craft spirits, ready-to-drink beverages, and the rapidly growing no and low alcohol categories. Designed exclusively for the trade, Vinexpo Americas offers a focused environment to source new products, expand distribution, build partnerships, and understand evolving market trends across the region. If you work in wine, spirits, or beverages in the Americas, Vinexpo Americas is where business happens. Register now at the link in the show notes. If you're wondering what the state of the industry is going to be in the future and where and how you can get an edge on it right now, you should be in Miami April 29th through the 30th at the Miami Beach Convention Center. This is the place to get new business and find out what's trending. I'm telling you guys, all of you listening that's in this little space that we all occupy, this is the place to do it. In the show notes is the link. Register for free. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the SOM TV podcast. I'm your host, Jason Wise. I want to remind you that you can watch today's episode on somtv.com or any of our apps on your streaming device, your smart TV, your iPhone, your Android, or your iPad. Today we travel to the rolling hills of Oregon's Willamette Valley to meet one of the pioneers in the movement to turn an unlikely place into one of the world's best Pinot Noir regions. But this story is more than wine. This is the story of how two brother-in-laws, one of them, the famed wine critic Robert Parker, turned an old pig farm into a legend in American wine. This is Beaux Frères, a place that proves making some of the best wine in America is hard as hell. We are joined by Michael and Mikey Etzel, the father and son duo behind the wines today. Welcome, gentlemen. How are you?
We're very well. The sun is finally out after some roller coaster weather here in the Willamette Valley.
Isn't that what makes it so special up there, though? Is that the weather is, a little contentious every once in a while?
Seasonal. Very
seasonal.
Seasonal plus surprises. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, why don't I have you two introduce yourselves? How would you introduce yourselves to someone who has not yet heard of you yet?
Well, if I may start, I am Michael Etzel, Michael Gerard G. Etzel. My son here, Michael D. Etzel, the middle child of three, all boys. I came across where I am today. I jumped back 40-some years ago, and this particular building that we're sitting in was a pig barn, actually. There were up to 60 head of pigs in this room, wiener pigs. And I came to the farm because it was for sale, and my wife and I were just actually looking to purchase some 1983 Pinot Noirs. Oregon had a very good vintage in 1983. And so we were out buying some of those vintages because of a birth year of my first oldest son, was born in 1983. And so en route to buying some Elk Cove Pinot Noir, this farm was spotted. And just for entertainment purposes, my wife and I decided to take a look at it just to see what $129,000 would purchase. And lo and behold, we ended up making a commitment that afternoon to purchase. But stop for a second. Mikey, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks for the
leeway
into an intro.
Well, I forgot to
interview.
interview.
No, it's all good. Up until that point of the story, I was about a year old, I think, 1986, right? Of the visit. Mikey Etzel. Everybody calls me Mikey. I'm not a junior. Michael Derek Etzel. And I am now the honcho. My dad let me take over the reins of first the vineyard in 2015 here. and then the winemaking role in 2016, and then in 23 he passed the keys as my current role as the CEO of.
I don't like that
it's
term, CEO.
It's well, it is what it is. It's just a title.
And he's doing quite a good job, I
Thank
must
you.
say.
Thank you. Wow, we're not going to be contradicting each other. Is that?
Well, maybe.
So
No,
let me just ask you a quick question here. What is it like to work with your father? This is great, having the two of you guys at once talk. I can totally like the dynamic you guys have. You can't fake that. What's it like to work for your pops?
Was it that you quit on me and I had to apologize?
2017 was a year that hit my limit. How is it working with my dad? I mean, it's the roller coaster of life. How was it working? Because now we don't really work together. How was it on our relationship? That's a good question. It was bad at the beginning, and then
Wasn't
in
bad.
the end,
It was,
that adversity, I feel like, has brought us a little closer, maybe.
well, you could look at the analogy of, chefs and winemakers have an ego. And so Mikey stepping in and refining the processes that winemaking processes that I had done for many, many years, more reflective on what the consumer is looking for today in wine. I was somewhat hesitant and possibly, and so it was a challenge. And yet now today, 5-6 years into it, a brilliant move by Mikey, more reflective of what the consumer is looking for in wines, and that is refinement, elegance, instead of power.
Well, that's
Interesting.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a cultural translation of how we're making wine, but
So
why don't we take a step back and talk about Beaux Frères and just first of all, what that means, what that word means, and why you named it that. Let's start there, and then I want to get into the kind of wines, because a lot of the wine people who are listening to this, we've got a lot of industry people, a lot of wine collectors, geeks, stuff like that. They know who Beaux Frères is. Your guys' wines are legendary up in the Willamette, and arguably one of the main reasons that region is known for such great Pinot Noir right now. But for the people who don't know what you make and why you're named what you are, can you maybe take a step back and kind of go with, why are you Beaux Frères? What is that?
all right. Well, as I was stating, when I purchased this farm on a whim almost with my wife in the summer of 1986, I realized that it was a bigger economic challenge and slightly bigger than I felt comfortable in doing. So I called my brother-in-law.
do you want to say why you purchased this rundown pig farm?
Well, because I did have some. No, not at the moment.
Not yet. Okay.
So I called my brother-in-law, who some of you may know is the world famous Robert Parker Jr. of the Wine Advocate. And I said, would you like to partner with me on this farm that I found that was extremely reasonable and I think potentially could make a great vineyard? I only wanted to make wine, grow grapes at the time. And he took it on. So he and I became partners, 50-50. Frère is French for brother-in-law, and so thus the name Beaux Frères. He came up with it, or my sister, I believe, came up with it. And at first, we just wanted to grow grapes. I had farming experience, no winemaking experience. Well, 5 years into it, financially wasn't there. It couldn't sustain my family, and certainly Robert Parker was not willing to continue to fund the project. So we were forced to get rid of the pigs in this building here renovate it from a pig barn to a winery, and make wine. And so, to answer your question, Beaux Frères is the name of the relationship, of the partnership.
I love it. Just on the brother-in-law thing, at this moment when you went to Robert Parker and you said, we want to do this, how important and influential was he? He was probably pretty, kind of approaching his peak as far as his influence goes in wine, right?
He was instrumental in allowing this organization to flourish. First of all, not knowing how to make wine, he opened the door for me to visit some of the greatest winemakers in Burgundy, Madame Beazleroy, André Porcheret, who was making wine for Madame Beaz, and a handful of others. He had a very clear vision on where and what we should do. Focus on Pinot Noir, not on 50 different varietals. At the time, he was the most influential wine writer, no question about it. And his palate preferred power. And so he was certainly telling me that I should grow grapes, low yields, a lot of French oak, Francois Frère, heavy toast barrels, ferment somewhat hot, and extract power. And so as a result, those type of wines were extremely popular. And so the brand Beaux Frères, first vintage, home run. We never struggled marketing wise. We were somewhat, what's the word? New. The direct mail order business. I think we were one of the first, or possibly the early stages of what now is common among a lot of wineries is direct to consumer sales. We were very fortunate to be able to do that.
Yeah. Did you, just one quick question on that. With the weather being what it is, did you have a hard time getting the wines to be that powerful? Were you having to pick them really late? How are you getting the wine to be that kind of style at that time?
Well, low yields, aggressively pulling the leaves in the fruit zone so that the sun was just beating down on the grapes. Dense spacing so that each plant was only asked to produce a pound and a quarter of fruit. Now, there were vintages that we had a string of warm vintages starting with 1990. That was a fairly warm vintage. That was our first vintage, 90. 91 was a little cooler, and the wines reflected the vintage very well. 92 was another warm vintage, and that was our first commercial vintage, 1992. Warm, ripe, 24.5, 25 bricks, translates into over 14% alcohol with a lot of new wood. So it was vintage. We were able in the 90s, there were a lot of warm vintages. 94 was ridiculously warm. Then we had a string of cooler vintages, 95, 96, and 97, that allowed us, the consumer began to understand our wines, that they reflected a vintage, but they still were all very powerful wines.
Yeah. Fascinating. To your son, I want to ask you, not many people have, the American wine business as a whole doesn't have a lot of second generations. For the most part, you got a lot of people who are first, sometimes second, very rarely more than that. Do you recall the first time you ever tasted wine? You ever had it with your father? Because you've literally grown up in this, your whole life. So do you remember the first time that you tasted wine, drank it?
No, not the first time. I was exposed.
Yeah, I gave it to him in a bottle with a nipple on the end.
Yeah, that was a year ago, right?
Not true, but I was exposed to it this place that I grew up on was nothing more than this crazy lifestyle that really did absorb the culture of our family. It was otherwise the area is a lot different now. Otherwise, there wasn't a lot of other people other than wine people and a few of the Mexican team in the vineyard that I grew a strong affinity with. So wine was just like always there.
It was just everywhere. Yeah.
Visiting my uncle and perhaps when my father would host people, influential characters and very just interesting, eclectic people that make wine were some of my most memorable wine moments. Visiting my uncle, being like, he's a pretty generous guy, and his cellar is probably one of the most amazing experiences to be able to dip into, and having access to magnums of Reyes at 16 years of age.
I'm sure what he has is I mean, you talk about one of the cellars of the world I would love to get my little hands into is definitely Robert Parker's. Robert Parker is a character. Everybody's got an opinion of what he's like, but for you, he was your uncle. What is his personality like? Like what is he like as a guy?
I always looked up to his amazing humor.
A little twisted humor,
but very just sharp. I was always enamored with his.
He can tell a joke with an accent better than anyone.
Like
his appetite,
like a French accent or something.
His appetite for Epicurean and film. We always looked up to him for his like banter about the latest films.
Wait, you tell me Robert Parker also loved movies? Get out of here.
He loves some of his movies are very out there, but certainly he has a collection of movies, a collection of music. He loves
cameras, right? He loved photography before he right. I mean,
oh my God! I see. This is a side of Robert Parker I don't think people hear about very often. Wait,
you gotta get him out of the shell and write a memoir or something about. He should. Right?
We asked Chris Marshall to do it, but he chickened out.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe it's something I can con him into letting me do. But the question for you,
his
though,
emotion and passion about wine, though, is also something that I mean, my dad would be talking on the phone with him about some wine he tasted, and he was crying about it. How much it spoke to him.
He called our Beaux Frères 1994 a freak of nature. He called and made me purchase 3 Clos de la Roche from Ponceau out of Magnums because it made him cry when he tried it. I still have some of the Magnums, and we open one every year. I mean, he's just read his writing when it makes you want to open a bottle of wine.
Absolutely. What can you just really fast tell me any of the movies he loves? I would kill to know
Tarantino.
What movies.
He's a big Tarantino fan, and we all, the brothers and I, took up a passion for some of the Tarantino films and
Open Range.
He had.
I love Open Range.
Yeah,
absolutely. Kevin Costner and Robert Duvall.
Right when CGI was coming out in like the late 2000s, that was our only criticism of him. Sometimes he would really like talk highly about CGI induced films. But it was part of a trend and the technological advancement of our world. But
fascinating, incredibly.
Yeah.
So when was the movement to kind of start changing the style of your wines? Was that based on purely market, or was that you, Mike? Do I call you Mikey or Mike? How do you go by the two of you guys?
I should really fix that, but
it's Mike and Mike.
Mikey was certainly the driving force for the style change.
No, I mean,
no.
I think it was. Who knows? There's no new ideas under the sun, but my father began decreasing the amount of new oak far before I was still in high school when he started looking at the use of oak as a synergizer more than a a big tube of ketchup that you blast your cheeseburger with. And you agree? Biodynamic farming in
Well,
1999 when you turned religion, he shifted his spirituality. My father's very spiritual as well.
Hallelujah.
He shifted at a certain point his spirituality from organized religion to biodynamic farming. That was around the time when we stopped going to church. And I think that some of the inspirations that you gained from that also made you realize that wine, this terroir, could be a little more soulful if you start some things to express the dirt, express the site a little more.
If you're going to give me credit, certainly in order to understand a terroir, a piece of property, I found that not picking it as ripe so that the alcohol didn't confuse the message, and not putting in so much new wood, which also confuses the message, that we could get a truer, more reflecting product from the vineyard, which all collectors, that's what they love, I believe, is, understanding the producer and then appreciating what that vintage has to offer, and reflective of not only the site, but the vintage itself. So by less alcohol and less new wood, it gave a cleaner picture of the wines.
In 2017, you said you kind of quit and you had to talk your son off a ledge. Let me ask you, what was the impetus? Was it a winemaking thing or just father-son stuff?
I think I was nitpicking him on everything.
Yeah, I think the culture of Beaux Frères from the beginning is very, very much like everything that we do here is we do it ourselves. My dad was one-man show for forever, and I watched him work tirelessly. My mom raised us quite, not to say you didn't raise me. I'm very proud
I didn't
of
raise you.
me
Your mom
being your
did it.
son. But, I think I'm a sponge, and I think you influenced me a lot. And I came into this role with a lot of pressure as the winemaker. 2017, the second year as the winemaker position. And it was the year that it was 2 months prior to the harvest. I just got married on the farm. And we had a historically heavy fruit load crop, and the vintage was pleasant and warm, and that meant that I felt like capturing it in a very, very scrutinizing, picking manner. We needed to bring an amount of fruit in at one point, 25 tons a day, which for the pig barn is not easy. And I'm not
a lot of stress.
The art of delegation is not the cultural practice that
What do you mean?
my father.
I'm much better at it now. What is?
He's a dictator, but he's not a good delegator. But and this vintage was like, it was the most. 18, 20-hour days, and just the most intense vintage I think
many cases
of my career.
Did
We produced like 35-40% more than we were sort of budgeting for. My budget at that time, right, was real accurate. But we produced 12,000 cases, something that is just breaching every seam of the winery. We were fermenting in the tractor shop, and my father, you should get to know him a little more. He's the most direct and most unfiltered person you would imagine, I think. And your nitpicking was enough to, I was versed to the anal anyways, yeah, it was just like, I don't know, we're right in front of the winery. I was weighing, there was probably 50 picking bins that I was trying to weigh and figure out tank logistics to match the parcels.
But with all the stress and everything, it's like, now, look, that event and you coming back, obviously you guys have a different relationship now, but that's in the wine. You know, that tension and that incredible release of tension. I got to say, your guys' wine is one of the most astounding, nuanced wines that comes out of the country, I think. You know, it sounds like hyperbole the way I'm saying it, but I'm really truly saying when people say that Oregon competes with Burgundy, which is a thing, you know, when I made the first Somm movie, I remember everybody getting tripped up by some Oregon wines. And oftentimes the Pinots that would do that were from you guys. I mean, it's a very interesting thing that I think without you and a few others, there would not be this drive towards, you know, I don't know if you guys like the term Burgundian or trying to, because I know you're not trying to copy Burgundy. I know you're trying to be your own thing, but it is an interesting style thing that I think you played a role in. And I just want to ask, because I know you have to get going. Do you look at yourself as a foil to Burgundy, or do you look at yourself as something completely different, or how do you kind of try to shape your wines in with that giant region looking over your shoulder?
Well, I personally, out of Burgundy, for Côte de Beaune wines, the white wines and the red wines, Volnay from the Côte de Beaune, seem to be more my style that I like, more like a Nebbiolo style from Italy. Whereas the Côte de Nuit is a little chewier and darker fruit. And I think early on in Beaux Frères wines, they were more like Côte de Nuit. And I think now with Mikey at the helm, our wines are more reflective of Côte de Beaune. But that being said, Oregon is Oregon, and Burgundy is Burgundy, and New Zealand is New Zealand, and California, Sonoma Coast, and those areas, they each have their own style. And I think it would be wrong for us to try to make wines like that, even though in the early years that's what we tried to do. Now that we're older and more mature as an organization, we realize what we have, and we highlight it. And it's Oregon.
Yeah.
But there's an energy level and a brightness about our wines that I think have a similar theme to good Burgundies.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Well, just to wrap this up, I mean, obviously this could go on for a long time, and I really am hoping I get a chance to get up there and film, open some bottles with you guys and do something bigger. But what do you see as kind of the future moving forward? I want, you know, a lot of people are in a weird place with wine at the moment. I don't really believe the way people are feeling right now. I think this will pass. But what are you guys stylistically and moving forward? How do you see Beaux Frères going? You guys going to get back into pig farming? What are we thinking?
Well, state of the wine business right now is not very strong. Oregon, though, is a bright spot within the world of wine. We are getting a lot of French. Now, Beaux Frères is owned predominantly by the Artemis organization. Bordeaux, they have Chateau Latour among one of their 9 different estates. So Oregon is the world is seeing that it's still affordable to come and plant grapes and produce wine. The laws are very open and easy, maybe too easy. But right now the world of wine is shrinking slightly, and so we'll see. I know Beaux Frères is focusing only on estate fruit. You're not buying any more grapes,
right? Our exploration phase of vineyard terroir outside of our little humble Ribbon Ridge estate, you know, the smallest sub-appellation in the Willamette Valley, is something that we're more and more proud of, and our current inflection point is more of a focus on just what we have up here. At this point, not juvenile vines, and just sharpening our understanding of this terroir and how it should be translated with a climate that's changing a lot, and a culture that's changing a lot, and just making the next step in technical
refinement,
something that is always going to be a constant, turmoil for me. His visionary approach, his school of hard knocks, his just feeling-based approach, balanced with this more just technical drive, is always going to be part of my questioning, but we're increasing the technical drive. And I think that our climate is quite buffered from some of the extremes that some of the other regions in the world are experiencing. And we're lucky. I think we're in more of a sweet spot. Whereas when my father started, I think on average, the climate was fringe to be able to ripen, barring a few vintages. But now we're sort of in this sweet spot, and we're really able to stress less about ripening, that's for sure, and stress more on capturing the ripeness and the freshness.
Yeah. Well, you guys are doing something right up there. I got to say, I'm a big fan of your wines, and now that I've seen the two of you interact with each other, I can't wait to do this more. I really want to say thank you very much for your time. I know you got to get going, so more to come from Beaux Frères, but I really appreciate you.
Jason, thank you.
Thank you,
time.
Jason,
Yeah.
and have a pleasant day, would you?
My pleasure. No, my pleasure. Thanks, guys. Thank you, everybody, for listening to today's episode. I want to thank the guys at Beaux Frères for sparing some time for us. I have a feeling you're going to see them again on Som TV. Remember, you can watch this episode on somtv.com or any device that you stream our streaming service. I want to thank our producer, John Adams. I want to thank you for listening, and I want to remind you that you can get your Vinexpo America tickets. That is coming up very soon. The link is in the show notes. It is the premier place to network and meet the great beverage professionals working today. And this industry needs it. Trust me right now. I will see all of you later. Have a great weekend, and make sure to drink something great. Talk soon. Bye-bye.